Past week, there were two tragic mass shootings, one at Brown and the other one in Australia at Bondi Beach. So today, I want to talk a little bit about what's been on my mind this week, which is exploring fundamentalism, extremism, these acts of terrorism, where they come from, why they happen. So let's explore today a bit of a heavier topic, but one that I think is the one that needs to be discussed in this moment in time. My name is Mino, and I'm the creative director of the Catharsis Project, which is really just an outlet for me to express myself. I don't take this too seriously, so if you're listening, I hope you don't take this too seriously. I'm just trying to work some stuff out for myself and having some fun doing it in a public setting. Last week, I played a little bit with adding some music and some sound and shifting this a little bit almost towards a radio format, and I really enjoyed that. So I'm going to continue to play some small snippets of copyright-free music today, bring you the best beats from here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So last weekend, I was with my friends. One of my very good childhood friends, he is Jewish, his family's Jewish, and every year since we were kids, they've invited me to their annual Hanukkah party, which is just, it's so much fun. It's such a joy. It's a privilege and an honor to be invited into someone's home and to celebrate holidays with them, right? And to be part of that tradition for many years, especially now that we're into adulthood, and to kind of keep coming together. So we were celebrating on Saturday night of last week, the Hanukkah party, and it's full on, right? It's like we're with each other all day, we're having fun, we're cooking, we're celebrating. Like there's very little time that I'm on my phone or checking anything. And so we happened to, for fun, get some Powerball tickets, and we turned on the news around 11 p.m. on Saturday night just to check the Powerball, and the local news was playing, and I was shocked because it was like, first they opened up with the Brown University shooting, which was kind of unfolding in the moment, and there was a manhunt going on, and it immediately took me back to when there was the Boston bombing and in the marathon, and there was a manhunt that at that time I followed very closely. I was listening to like the police radio, I was on Reddit, like I was really sucked into that, and it kind of reminded me of that in a way. And then when the news just kept going, and there were so many things that had happened, I guess that day or that evening, in the Philly metro area. There was a fire, there was a local shooting, like there was so many things going on, and I was like, oh my God, like just being blasted with this kind of negative news, which maybe on some levels important to know, but coming out of like 12 hours of celebration and being with people and not being on my phone, it was a bit overwhelming, honestly, just to take it in all at once. None of us won the Powerball, by the way, so that did not occur. And so then we kind of wrapped up the party at some point, and I went home, I fell asleep, and then I woke up the next morning, and I saw there was the shooting in Australia at Bondi Beach, and it's the first day of Hanukkah, and it was a anti-Semitic, clearly motivated by anti-Semitism, and I found myself feeling just like so much emotion. What's interesting, I have to admit, is I think I felt more emotion with the shooting in Australia than I have with almost any of the kind of domestic terrorism shootings that we've had in the United States in the last, 10 years. It shows to me, I don't know, for me, I don't know if it's just like a coping thing, but I really don't get myself involved. I don't go deep. I'm aware that stuff has happened, but I really just can't click in and view things and listen and watch when it comes to mass murders in the US. There was a breaking point for me around Sandy Hook, where Sandy Hook shook me to like my core. And I could not think of anything that was worse. I don't know what words, like there's no words to describe something that and the response and the reaction from my fellow Americans, my people around me, the government, was just to do nothing, And something in me snapped at that time, around that time period, where I just gave up. I said, if, the slaughtering of young children, a massacre of young children doesn't make us flinch, doesn't make us do anything in the way of trying to restructure society, then truly this system is beyond broken, beyond redemption. I just had to emotionally, mentally just distance myself. I think that was a moment where I really kind of gave up on a lot of believing in any kind of structural reform, probably in the US, and gave up on kind of trying as a citizen, to be honest. I think it's taken many years for that outcome to kind of play itself out. But I think if I trace it back, that is one of the root causes, the root moments where I just said, like, fuck this. This is broken. This is broken. And I know there's obviously a huge plurality of Americans that would like to do something about it, but we haven't. We haven't found any political willpower to do anything about that since Sandy Hook. And I look at everyone around me who's kind of, especially kind of probably more quote unquote conservatives, right wing, who parade around, like puff up their chest of like, I'm a man, I'm a protector. And there's like this whole like, I'm a protector. I protect my woman, I protect my children. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but like there's actual children being slaughtered and massacred all around you, your neighbors, your citizens, your family, your friends, and you don't do shit. So it's just idle, boyish hero worship. It's like I puff myself up. I'm the hero. I have all these fantasies of myself stopping crime and shooting the bad guy and the intruder. But when actual kids are being harmed and massacred in your own neighborhood, no one does shit. So to me, it's all a bit of an ego trip, a marketing ploy. You're the protector. Yeah, okay, fuck off. If you're an actual man, if you're an actual protector, you would listen to the people who are coming to you and saying, we are suffering under something. So if a third of women experience sexual violence and assault and you're a protector, you should be fucking listening and trying to do something about that. If the children in your fucking nation are being massacred, you should do something about that. I'm really fucking tired of this like ego boy thing. It's like, I'm a little boy and I want to be Batman. All right, but what about the actual fucking problems in your country, man? You're not doing anything to actually try and resolve or address those. I don't, in general, I try not to say what's a real man, what's not a real man, because I think if there are 8 billion people and there are 4 billion men, then there are 4 billion different ways to be a man. No one has a monopoly or can define what being a man is. So fucking stupid. But there is a difference between a boy and a man, or adolescent and a man, in terms of a psychology. And this hero thing, that is very boy. I'm the protector. Okay, fuck off. Fuck off. You're still a boy. Grow up. Grow the fuck up. Take responsibility. Listen to the people around you and actually try to serve the people around you if you want to be a protector. All right, that's one of my probably many rants of this day. So Sandy Hook really, I don't know, broke something for me, and all these fucking protectors. And now it's hard for me to tune in to mass violence in the United States. So something about seeing it overseas, I have to say, kind of touched something in me once more. Because on some level, the social contract outside the United States, or at least in like Europe, Australia, New Zealand, Asia probably, is like that this doesn't happen, right? Like it's not supposed to happen there. This is a US thing, right? Those fucking crazy Americans with their guns. It's not supposed to happen here. And yet it did. It did. It happened in Australia, and it was horrific. I don't know what else to say. It's like a fucking awful thing. So I want to talk about, why does that happen? Why does that happen? And what's some of the underlying mechanisms? What's happening here? So one thing I will begin this episode with, I'm going to really try to emphasize this point, is that I'm going to be talking about values, human motivations, human behaviors. And I am not correlating these to a political party yet, at least. I'm going to be talking about conservative values, but not in the political sense. We all have an instinct for self-preservation. We all have an instinct for protecting ourselves. There's a fear of loss for many of us. There are certain values that the best word we can use to describe them is conservation, conservative values. The right wing might put conservative as a branding, as a kind of promotional tool, as a word, but I don't think they have a monopoly on conservative, actual, let's say like lowercase c conservative values. And honestly, I would even go as far as to say many democratic values are probably conservative in nature. So I'm trying to go beyond the marketing, beyond the branding, to look at the actual science of human behavior and the science of human value systems. So let's really put what we think about when I say the word conservative, all the associations, all the political stuff, to the side for a moment. For a moment, let's put it to the side. One of the best theories of motivation, I believe, and this is what I do in my day job. I coach CEOs for a living. I have a separate consulting company. And so I study this stuff intensely, right? Organizational psychology and theories of behavior, motivation, organizations, culture, blah, 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 blah. So one of the best scientific theories for values and motivations comes from a gentleman named Shalom Schwartz. And Schwartz created this statistical model that's so cool. It's very hard to kind of describe it with words because it's actually a really cool visual. One day I would love to do, like, if you ever watch like the Marvel movies and you've seen like Iron Man, Tony Stark, like he has these really cool holographic projections that he can walk through. Like I would love one day to make a video where it's like a holographic projection of Schwartz's motivation theory and kind of walk through and talk about all the different ways that we're motivated as human beings. But here's the kind of crux of it. He basically looked at all the different things that motivate human beings, and he looked at what was correlated with each other. So what are values that are similar and what are values that are very different? And he kind of plotted it on an actual visual, physical graph. And it creates this really cool image where you can see things that are close to each other and things that are far from each other. So for instance, if we take curiosity and creativity, those are two different motivators for human beings, and they're really close to each other. So visually, you can imagine like two trees that are super close to each other. What's the kind of opposite of a curious, creative motivator is obedience. So you can think of that's like on the other side of the field. Like there's a tree that's really far on the other side of the field called obedience, right? Listening to your elders. That's like really far from creativity and curiosity. And so you have almost this field of trees, right, with all these different motivators, and some are close and some are far, and they form groupings. So at its highest level grouping, the way to start to understand human behavior and human motivation is that on one axis, let's call this the y-axis, if you remember from school, so it's the vertical, you have on the north side, on the top, desire for change. So it's like an openness to change, right? And on the bottom, so it's opposite, is maintenance. So you want to keep things as they are. And then on the x-axis, this is the horizontal, yeah? On the left side, you have individualistic, right? Very personal. You just focus on yourself. And the other one is the social realm. So it's kind of this collectivist. And that forms 4 quadrants. And now those quadrants are broken up into further kind of categories. And those categories are further broken down into even more motivators. So again, I think it's very cool. It's hard to describe. It's just good to look at it. I'll try and post it in the video version, but in the audio version, you might want to just look it up. So these form 4 quadrants, right? If you're still following. So we have the individualistic and change. We have the individualistic and maintenance. We have change collectivist and collectivist maintain. So these form 4 quadrants. So if you're very individualistic and you like change a lot, then you tend to like things like having an exciting life, adventure, stimulation, privacy, creativity, curiosity, freedom, independence. So there's this big quadrant of like, yeah, I'm really just like, I like change. I like stimulation. I like creativity. So this independence, right? So that's the whole, I'm an individualistic person and I'm very open to change. I think you see a lot of Enlightenment ideas. So if you look at the Enlightenment thinkers, a lot of them were espousing things like freedom, creativity, choosing your own goals, right? Privacy. This is all that kind of individualistic, open to change. So a lot of, I would say, Enlightenment thinkers would probably end up over here. Then let's say you're an individual, but also into kind of maintenance. What you actually end up seeing there is people who are really all about that achievement and power life. So you see a lot of things like success, ambition, influence, social recognition, wealth, authority, social power, preserving public image. So this is all about people who are really individualistic, yeah, but they kind of want to keep the system as it is. They just want to win at that game. So they want to, if the people who are individualistic but change orientated are more like, let me run my own race. Yeah, that's like the perfect way to probably like, I'm the run my own race guy, you know, just like to each their own, but just let me run my own race. Then you have the like, I'm going to win the game. So a lot more of this kind of like competitive, social kind of, whether again through it's like through work, ambition, or it's through like Machiavellian, you know, political, I win the game. I win the game. There is a game, of course, there is a game of the existing social structure. So when you get like the Andrew Tates of the world, they come out and they show you the matrix, right? They basically just say like, they make you aware that there is a social structure and there is a game that's played in that social structure and there's a way to win the game of that social structure. So this is like all about that. Now it ignores the fact that like you don't have to play the game. Like you actually don't have to even be in the social structure at all. You know, we'll get into that in a second, but like one version of this is just like, I run my own race, right? The one we already talked about, which is just like, I don't care about your fucking social hierarchy. I just go live my life and be creative and have fun and just do my own thing, right? Then there's the version where it's like, all right, there is a game. I'm going to go fucking win the game. Okay. So that is an option. That is a choice. Yeah. And on some level, again, many of us are probably engaged in that. I spent a lot of my early career engaged in this exact kind of motivation. For me personally, what I found is every time I did engage in this kind of value set, it felt like I was killing myself, destroying myself because I have certain other values it was competing with inside me. So yes, we also have competing values within us. That's usually why we have a conflict. If there was no conflict, we could just make decisions quite easily. Okay, so this is like the individualistic side of the chart, right? Then on the other side of the chart, we have more collectivist, socially orientated motivations. So if you're a collectivist that is also maintaining, so you're conserving, right? This is what we call the conservative value set, right? You really care about conserving the thing, but doing it as a group. So you really care about this, like, you know, we're in it together. We have tradition, we're devout, we honor our elders, we're obedient, we have security and social order, and we care about cleanliness and a sense of belonging. So yes, for some that might be interesting to find out is sense of belonging is actually a deeply conservative value. It is, I want to be part of the herd. Yeah. And so none of these are right or wrong. Just by the way, they all have a utility and a social function to them. But this is what I would call conservative values. Now, when it comes to the politics, the political parties, sometimes the right wing, sometimes in the United States, the Republican Party, sometimes actually has these values. But more often, they brand themselves in these values. So they have this marketing, yeah, but they don't actually live these. So that's, of course, the hypocrisy of the conservative movement, of the right-wing movement, of the Republican movement. I think it's more important to see what people do than what people say. So there's a lot of co-opting of the language of conservatism, but most of the value set, I would say, of the actual Republican Party is the Machiavellian one, the Andrew Tate kind of quadrant, right? Which is all about ambition, success, social recognition, wealth, authority, preserving public image, and social power. If there's one thing that party is extremely loyal to, I believe it is power. That is how also Schwartz defines that quadrant. It is the power. So that's what they really earnestly care about, is they're individualistic in many ways, and they're competing for power. But they dress themselves up in a lot of the language of conservatives to be able to attract actual certain conservatives. So a lot of the religious right, again, falls somewhere between this power and conservative part of the equation. So that's conservatism. But as I mentioned, I think Democrats also practice a lot in their value set and their behavior and what they do. They don't market it like such. They don't brand it that way. Again, they say very different things, but if you look at what they do in their behavior, I think a lot of Democrats actually love to act in conservative ways. They love to kind of preserve the system as it is. Okay, so that's conservatism. And then finally, we have this very change-orientated and collectivist quadrant, and this is called the transcendent quadrant. So this is where we're all one. The unity starts to emerge. This is where you start to see things like unity with nature, a world of beauty, a world of peace, wisdom, inner harmony, protecting the environment, spiritual life, mature love, true friendship, meaning in life, honesty. These are values of transcendence, which is that there is something above and beyond me. And so my individuality melts into something that's above and beyond me. And so we're open to adapting and changing as things move, right? Spoiler alert, when I test myself, because you can do tests, right? And I did a test, I come out very strongly in the universalism, benevolence, transcendence quadrant. So this is my bias. This is like, we all have biases probably. This is the value set I have cultivated in this life so far. I find respect for the other ones. I have probably admiration even for the other ones. I've tried the other ones. For me, I am a universalist. That's where I am in my life. So you're often, if you're listening to me, going to find me talking about the values of protecting the environment, unity with nature, world of beauty, world of peace, spiritual life, mature love, forgiving, honest, true friendship, meaning in life. Like that's what motivates me. And that's my values. That's what my behavior will reflect over time. So yeah, I'm very biased for that. And if you don't want to hear about that, then this probably isn't a good video or audio podcast to listen to. I also have some, of course, motivators around like curiosity, creativity. But as the older I get, actually, the more and more I go into this transcendist, I don't even know the word anymore. This kind of like unity, universalism quadrant has become stronger and stronger as a motivator for me the older I've gotten. So this whole thing of like people who get older become more conservative, maybe. I don't know if that's true. It's not true for me, at least. All right, that's the table stakes. Now we can actually kind of get into the discussion today, because in my humble opinion, I believe almost all acts of fundamentalism, extremism, terrorism, mass violence, massacres, at its core is essentially conservative values in action, taken to the extreme. It's like where power and conservatism meet, which probably does overlap with a lot of the modern Republican Party. So yeah, let's get into that. All right, what do I mean by this? Why do we have a certain sort of conservative draw to mass violence? If you've listened to me or you listen to any of these recordings, you'll see that I kind of dunk on Democrats a lot. And I don't always talk about the right wing or Republicans as much. And part of that is because I'll share with you in a bit why I think it deserves a bit of a different approach. But on some level, I don't think people in Republican or the MAGA movement can be reached. I don't think I'm the one to reach them with my kind of universalist ideology. So I kind of, like most of us, probably pick on the people I feel are closest to me and the people I think have the most hope, the people that I have the most like, why aren't you seeing the things that I think are worth seeing? And I believe you have the potential to see them the way that I see them, or at least you use the branding of universalism a lot. You use it as a marketing slogan. So why the fuck don't you actually act in that way? So it's a little bit of like checking and challenging someone who's co-opting things I care about and being like, well, do you actually care about them? Because honesty, right? Honesty is a big value of universalism. So I'm like, if you're gonna be honest, at least, like either fucking shit or get off the pot, Conservative values. One of the biggest conservative values is a sense of belonging. And this is where I found some deep irony, because in the work of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, there are always like letters that we start appending. I don't know where this comes from, because I don't really think it's from scholars or academia. Somehow, I don't know if it's TikTok or whatever the fuck. Seems like we keep adding letters. I was and am a practitioner of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I do this professionally. Actually, it's a part of what I do. So I think anytime you look at leadership and structures, you need to take into account things like diversity and inclusion. And I do that. And I have been doing that for 10 years. So I am the guy here. The mask is off. I do DEI. Yeah. And by the way, the news has reported on DEI is really fucking stupid. And maybe that merits its own conversation. But how you actually practice that and how you talk about it and what's in the news is completely different. But I'm the guy, right? I've been doing DEI. Again, I told you I'm a universalist. So I believe that we're all human beings. We're all spatial galactic beings. Yeah. This is just a bit of a mask we've put on for a little period of time. So again, there's my values talking. Sense of belonging is something that at some point the DEI crew, someone in that movement was like, we need to add belonging. We need to add belonging to DEI. So some organizations started doing DEIB, so diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I get it on a very kind of knee-jerk reaction. It's like, cool, we want you to be part of the tribe, essentially part of the herd. There's a group identity. And I understand on some level, like if you're at work and like, I don't know, we all work at Amazon, we're all Amazonians. I don't know what they call themselves. Or we're all Facebookers or like whatever company you want to pick. So you want everyone to be like, okay, we're part of this tribe and we belong. But what's interesting is at its core, belonging is an in-group, out-group behavior. There's an us and there's a them. And you want to be part of the us. So this is actually a deeply conservative value that this kind of DEI movement started to pick up on and incorporate into its nomenclature, which I found very peculiar, because up until that point, I think it actually did have more of this universalist flavor to it. And all of a sudden it has more of this almost like conservative us versus them. There's also a lot in Democratic Party and politics. There's a lot of this us versus them. And especially when you look again on the kind of like the TikTok crew, there's a lot of this us versus them, which is a deeply conservative. The whole cancel culture is an us versus them. The purity testing, all of this is an us versus them. So this is where like the quote unquote far left weirdly has a lot of conservative values. It ends up being like an orthodoxy. And when scholars, unbiased, I think academic scholars, look at the political fights and the culture clashes in the US, they find that both the far right and the far left are both operating as religions, which we'll get to in a second. So there's an interesting thing where a lot of far left or even Democratic Party, again, really acts in the behavior set of conservative values. This is not your grandfather's, or grandmother's Democratic Party. This is not this is not FDR's party. This is something wholly different. So what gets someone to act in a kind of heinous way? Well, if we look at it through the lens of the motivation framework I shared, often what you find is that there are individuals who are acting on behalf of a collective. So they are trying to participate in, belong, be admired by a certain collective, a certain group. In the last 20 years or so, a lot of that has been online groups. So you yourself might be a bit of a loner. You don't have any social ties. You don't have a healthy sense of self-worth. There's all kinds of emotional stress, kind of emotional things going on, right? Psychological things going on. And then you find one group that is willing to kind of accept you at a cost. Yeah, because usually there's a lot of like hazing and hierarchy and shittiness, but you can at least be a part of something and be kind of a little bit in this like us versus them. And then you do what you can to maintain your affinity and your loyalty to that group. You don't want to lose that group identity. You don't want to lose that kind of social belonging. So again, it's conservative. It's a loss. You're motivated by like, you don't want to lose something. only through the power of a culture, I think, can you really override the individual. Yeah. So this is, again, the fault line is there's an individual and there's a collective. There's an I and there's a we. And the I and the we are constantly pulling and pushing on each other. So we want to be kind of individuals, but we want to be a part of this collective thing. So this push-pull of the I and the we is banded together by culture. Culture is invisible. It's basically all the autopilot thoughts, emotions, values, behaviors that we do in our day-to-day. That's the same as other people. It's like in accordance with other people. So if I go out in the streets, we have a cultural norm of jaywalking in the Northeast, yeah? So it's kind of I don't think about it. Like the light's red, but there's no car. So I just walk across the street. Or now that I moved here to Philadelphia, yeah, you can make a right on red in the city. Whereas in New York City, you can't. So here it freaks me out when I'm like at a red light and I'm like, oh, I can make a right. Am I going to break the law? Am I doing something wrong? And like, I'm still stuck in the kind of unconscious autopilot of New York City where you could not make a right on red. So anytime we have this kind of collective autopilot, yeah, because it's stuff you stop thinking about, right? If we just speak in our language to each other, English, if you are a native English speaker or a very fluent English speaker, you don't think about it, you just speak. But I'm bilingual, right? So I also speak Greek, but my Greek is getting rusty because I just don't use it that much. And so when I'm in Greece and I'm speaking to my relatives, I have to start thinking a lot about like how I'm going to say certain things and why I'm going to say certain things. So all of a sudden the autopilot's off, you know? I'm not just expressing myself. I'm actually thinking very hard. You can have a culture within your own house, within your own family, right? That's like the basis of culture. Like, how do we do it in this family? And that can be different how other families do it. Yeah. So like I, leave the dishes in the sink and I rinse them and I let them sit overnight. That can be a part of your family's culture. Whereas another culture says we have to have the kitchen clean every single night. So all these cultures are just different, ways that we've kind of autopiloted different things. And then you'll see in your company, if you work at a company or organization, there's a culture. In your country, there's a culture. Probably in your continent, there's a culture. It's all the different ways we do things without questioning them. It's the autopilot we all go into. It's very powerful culture because if you're born into or assimilate into a culture, then you're just not questioning things, right? You're just on autopilot doing what everyone else is doing. Sometimes cultures can be healthy, right? They can be good for the individual, for the collective, for the earth and the planet. And sometimes cultures can have hindrances or downsides or shadow sides or pitfalls, right? The dark side of culture, which is like if everyone in the culture is smoking cigarettes, then you're also going to smoke cigarettes. If everyone in the culture is drinking alcohol excessively, you're also most likely going to end up drinking excessively because our need to be a part of the social group is very strong as human beings. It is a very strong and legitimate value that we hold and motivator that we hold is to belong for the sake of safety and emotional nourishment. We have all these cultures that are popping up, right? And we organize ourselves and create these cultures. And sometimes these cultures, they become groups. And those groups can start to take on more of a almost religious element to them. They can become sects and they can even become cults. What does that mean? So there are certain characteristics. I'm going to go into the whole science and psychology of cults per se, but there are a certain set of characteristics that start to exist within a cult that make them particularly dangerous to individuals and to other people outside of the cult. One of the most deeply held needs of a cult is for its members to conform and to comply. This is like the root of conservative values in the Schwartz theory of motivation. It is like the most basic, core, fundamental part of the conservative value set is conform and comply. They don't like when you have an individualistic streak. I'll share a story of one of my friends. He's a psychologist by background. And when we were working together in New York, one of our friends tried to recruit him into an MLM, a multi-level marketing scheme, a pyramid scheme. Yeah. So they recruit him into this Ponzi scheme. It's one of those professional business ones. I'm sure you've seen those, right? Where like everyone is wearing the suit and tie and the dresses and they have all these events. And yeah, like I think many of us, myself included, we can sniff that like a mile away. My friend got recruited into that, and he knew it immediately, but he's a very curious guy. He loves curiosity, creativity, and change. And so he says, what the hell? I'm going to join the cult and I'm going to go home every night and I'm going to write down all my experiences through the lens of a psychologist, of someone who really wants to experience this from the inside. So this crazy bastard, he started going to the MLM meetings and joining the kind of pyramid scheme. And he kept going deeper and deeper. He was like bringing his wife to the events. And every night he'd go home and he'd jot down his insights and thoughts and started creating like a journal, right, of his experience in the MLM. There was a certain point where he realized like he was at that juncture where they were going to start asking him for really large financial commitments, that he decided actually, no, I'm at my end. But because we had this mutual friend that was part of it and he didn't want to hurt their feelings, he decided at the next big event for the pyramid scheme, instead of wearing a suit and tie, he was only going to wear a suit. He was not going to wear a tie. So he's going to go with an open collar. And he went to the event and they stopped him at the door and they basically said, if you can't follow our dress policy, then you can't be a part of this special group of people. And they kicked him out on the spot. And so then he went to our mutual friend, was like, I'm so sorry, I forgot, I didn't realize, I didn't wear a tie and I got kicked out. And then it was, oh, okay, that sucks, I'm so sorry. It's a shame that happened, right? And so they still were able to have a good social rapport, a friendship without any kind of hard feelings. No one's going to listen to this video podcast. I can tell the secrets of the world on this and no one listens to these except myself. And so that small act of disobedience, not wearing a necktie, that got him kicked out of the pyramid scheme, got him kicked out of that cult, because they really, really are screening for people that will conform and comply fully. That is like what they select for. Yeah. Like there's a very intense recruiting process for all of these. If you look at the documentaries online, like things like Nexium, one of the key things is like they have a very, very intense recruiting process for this exact reason, because they want to have people conform and comply. When we're in a cult, there's a few things that like really beyond the recruitment process, they really sets them apart. The first is like there's this like complete, like I said, compliance to the collective. This can be an authority, right? So a lot of cults have this like kind of, charismatic authority. But in the online age, I actually don't even think you need the charismatic authority. You just need the power of the collective, and the culture can do a lot of the work. And you see a lot of like extreme acts of terrorism coming from these diffuse groups where there is no leader. There is no one individual saying like, you need to go do this and orchestrating and commanding it. You actually can have this like very dispersed terrorism occurring just based on culture, the culture of the cult alone. But one of the key things is like you give everything to the collective, right? So you have to kill every sense of individuality all the way down to you cannot listen to anything your body is physically telling you. So a key like theme that comes up in every cult is you have to keep people disembodied. You have to cut off the connection between the head, the thinking, the ideology, the meaning making, the reality, virtual reality maker, and the actual physical body where the senses are. So senses and feeling become the enemy of the cult, because most of us, vast majority of us, I would warrant to say, there are lines in the sand that if we listen to our body will give us instant feedback, instant red flags. There is a small feeling of dread, something in the gut, there's fear or anger or something is tensing. Like there's somewhere in the body knows when it's being violated. So the body is one of the most secure places for wisdom and keeping us safe. If we violate our own body or someone violates our body instantly knows. It can't lie. It cannot lie. It can never lie. The only thing we can do is detach from sensing it. So we can disassociate, we can disembody ourselves, we can basically retreat just to our head. So if we ourselves or our children, or we want someone to not get into a cult, one of the number one things we can do is you have to fucking listen to your body and stop overriding sensations and emotions in the body. Another really, really important thing that I've already hit a couple times is the sense of belonging. You are in a group. It is us versus them. It is exclusive. You are special. You are elite. It is us versus them. If we want to kill cults, we want to kill extremism, then we have to kill this us versus them. We have to collapse, this like I'm in some hierarchy and my group is better than everyone else. The third is, and I think this is a really important one, is cults really try to isolate people and they really tightly try to control the information sources that a person has. So you don't want them reading the news from the outside world. You don't want them talking to outside people. You really want them to be fully isolated. So even when we look at like WeWork, Adam Newman, he started the crazy guy. Outside of like WeWork being a huge pyramid scheme, he started something that I don't know why like we never talk about. I saw it in some like snippet somewhere. But he also started this experiment called We Live, which is an even crazier thing where like he created essentially adult dormitories, and people in the adult dormitories were essentially not allowed to like leave the dorms other than to work, and they weren't allowed to have friends outside of the dorms. So they had to completely cut themselves off socially. So it's like as if they were in like the real world, or whatever, Big Brother, whatever other reality TV show. Did I just date myself by saying real world? So you're in a reality show. But it's not a reality show, it's just your fucking life, and you're just stuck in this adult dorm, and then you go to your work at WeWork, and that's your life. We work and we live. Horrible, right? But it's like, it's this instinct and impulse of like, we can't have these people interacting with the outside world. We have to keep them controlled. What does this all add up to? If like you are in this addicted to this kind of sense of belonging, you have no internalized sense of your actual self, your senses, your feelings, the little like alarm systems in your body, and you've controlled all the information no one can see on the outside. It's then you've completely allowed yourself as a leader or as a collective to manipulate the reality of this person. And that's ultimately the goal, which is how do I create a fake reality, a virtual reality, and place this person in the virtual reality, and they have no independence or autonomy. And then I can change the reality because reality is just perception. So I can change the reality overnight, and that person's world changes overnight. And then they go do, say, whatever I want them to because I'm in control of their reality. So it's like gaslighting taken to its extreme, the absolute. There is no further point probably of like you've completely overridden this person physically, mentally, and socially. And those are the checks and balances we have, as we live our life. So yeah, it's crazy shit. It's really crazy shit. This is why I said, like, I don't think dealing with like Republicans or folks who are MAGA, it's like good to like yell at them or shame them or debate them or challenge them. And I've tried. I do have a friend who I would consider was at a point in time, I would say far right, and saying some pretty crazy shit, in my humble opinion. And I tried everything with this guy, debating, yelling, challenging, this thing, that. Like I've tried everything under the sun. And when I really, really sat with it, what I realized was at his core, he was afraid. He was afraid. Most conservative values, most values of maintenance even, whether you're Machiavellian or you're in this conservative quadrant, are motivated by fear. Fear. If we can support people to come out of fear or to have an accurate threat detection system, I actually think that's the main thing that's needed to kind of solve a lot of this. So you'll have to be able to get to the person. You have to be able to communicate with them, right? If they're in a cult, you can't communicate with them. The good thing with something so large and diffuse as like the MAGA thing is like you actually can talk to these people. You can get to them still. At this point in time, it seems like you can almost get to them physically. I'm not talking about like convince them of anything, but you can at least bridge a communication channel. And then everything I saw that worked with my friend was just helping him come out of fear. So anytime he'd go on some rant or this and that, I'd be like, hey, what's happening right around you right now? Like, look out your window, look outside. What do you see? I see kids playing, having fun. I see birds. I see some trees. I was like, okay, so you're good. Yeah, you're good. Like, can you take that in for a moment? Can you breathe? Can you let your nervous system just fucking come down a little bit? And then it was only through that and actually through love. So this whole like us versus them, isolation, the kind of fear of being ostracized. I'm like, I love you. Like I accept you for who you are and I love you. And I will always, some party will always love you. Doesn't mean I will condone everything you do or tolerate everything you do. You're responsible for your actions. But I will always, you're my friend, I will always love you. And it was that was the formula I found that started to make huge inroads, actually. It's like, wow, this guy has love in his life. So he has social connection. He has less fear. He has more orientation and grounding and seeing reality for what it is. This is it. I think this is really what's needed when it comes to those individuals. Anything else, you actually double down and put them further into the cult or further into the kind of culture or whatever grip they have. So this whole thing of like, we shit on the right wing, I know it's fucked up. Like, it's the instinct is like, okay, you're doing horrible shit. I should yell at you. I should scream at you. I should shame you. I should condemn you. I'm like, I get it. It's a very instinctive response. It doesn't help people come out of the fucking cult. It doesn't help people come out of the cult. I've even seen many times now, which fucking deeply frustrates me, where you see someone who kind of is coming out of the MAGA mentality. So they're coming out of this kind of right-wing thing, and they're starting to wake up, if you could put it that way, and kind of, whoa, what the fuck? Like, what have I been in the last few years? And what I see from the left, from Democrats, from liberal, everyone just shames them. Like, ha, fuck you. We told you so. Fuck you, piece of shit. Like, I'm like, that is the worst thing you could do if you're trying to solve this issue. Instead, all you're trying to do is just self-congratulate yourself and make yourself hierarchically superior and fucking morally superior. So you're still in the us versus them. So you're still like, ha, you're one of them. And we're the good ones. We're the pure ones over here. And so where does that person go? At best, they'll go off on their own, I guess. But they're either going to go back to some version of this like shitty right-wing cult thing, or they're going to maybe be on their own. But there's no welcome party, right? There's no other place they can go and just be like, oh, fuck, I'm coming out of this thing. What I really, again, think they need is immediate social connection. All right, you're not on your own. There are people around you. Let's support you to get on your feet. Let's make sure you check in with your physical, emotional, mental health. Let's make sure you can keep widening your information source. Let's make sure you bring the fear levels down. One of the main things psychologists have found when they look at why people don't leave cults is the fear of the unknown. They don't know what's out there because they've been so closed off from everything, So can you help them orientate and bring down the fear? Can you accept them for who they are and show some modicum of acceptance, which I think love and acceptance go hand in hand, and just let them breathe and fucking chill the fuck out. It's like when you're scuba diving and you come up and you don't want to get the bends. This is the exact same thing. They're coming up for air. You don't want them to get the bends, and you also don't want to fucking drown them. So it's really important that we treat people who might be coming out of this with some modicum of respect. Again, this is where I am don't understand why, as a political party, the Democrats, you should be trying to get the most possible. Like me and my business, I try to get the most dollars possible. Politicians should be trying to get the most votes possible. So you should create movements that try to get the most votes possible, not create an ever shrinking, self-cannibalizing party. And that's exactly what the conservative movement and the Democrats, the conservative movement, ironically, of the far left is doing. It's cannibalizing itself. It is a conservative movement. I don't know how else to say it. The left wing is conservative in its values. And then there, of course, it's not like we're every day probably trip over and fall someone who's coming out of a cult or coming out of a extremist ideology. But this whole philosophy, this ideology of we cut people off, cancel. I don't talk to my brother or my father or my sister or my mother. And we've allowed ideology to splinter our families. And this is happening on the right and the left, right? This whole culture war, this whole political war is this ideology is more important to me than my own family or my own nation. So our loyalties are all fucked up. So we're more loyal to some, idea or some party or some fucking group online than our own family, our own neighbors, our own country. That's very peculiar to me. And the more we self-isolate, the more we create us versus them, the more we create the conditions for more violence. Because when it's us versus them, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to dehumanization. And that's exactly what's happening in this kind of culture clash, is this dehumanization, right versus left. Ah, you're just MAGA. Ah, you're Antifa. Ah, you're BLM. Ah, you're DEI. It's just constant dehumanization. You're an illegal. These are all human beings. These are your fucking neighbors. These are your fucking fellow citizens, your fucking brothers and sisters and friends and cousins. This is again where I come from a different culture. Yeah, so I come from Greece. My family does. And in Greek Mediterranean culture, and as I've said before, in many cultures outside of the Northern European American model, you just don't really throw people away that easily. Like, it sucks in a way because you can probably offend way more, and there's a whole other dysfunction I won't get into. There's a shadow side to this thing, which is like people can perpetrate a lot, but you can kind of really push those relationships very far before they break. Whereas it seems to me in the United States and Northern Europe, Western Europe, relationships are so fucking fragile, and they bend and break immediately. They're so fragile. And what that leads to, at least in this political climate, is people not talking to each other, dehumanizing, hating each other, just grouping like for like, cannibalizing kind of social identities that keep us in some form of like actual harmony. And everyone just wants to fight. So I don't know how this doesn't result in more violence. Like everything I see, every trend line to me, at least, and maybe this is my bias, is it's online shit. I don't see as much in person, but at least online, everything seems to be driving us towards fighting each other and more violence. We should be taking in more information sources. We should be trying to keep in touch with each other. We should be trying to really stay in touch with our own bodies. If you do that, you kill the cult. If you do that, you kill the cult. So it's in these kind of toxic breeding grounds online, usually so far it seems to be, that you create these cultures, you create this isolation, this kind of special elite sense. You disconnect people from actual reality. You amp up the fear, the hate. And then of course it is the stochastic terrorism, right? It's like then it's just statistics. Then it's just probabilities. You're just waiting to see who pops off, because it's only essentially a matter of time until people pop off, because you've created all the fucking conditions for people to pop off. So you can't change that until you change the underlying conditions. It's a system, and the system will keep reproducing itself. I even question this notion of like we don't tolerate hate speech. The only reason, not because I think hate speech is good, but the only thing that I think about is if you ban something in a large platform, most of those people will go and reorganize on smaller platforms and more private, more discreet. And the more they move outside the realm of the public sphere where people can get in touch with them, I believe will have worse and worse consequences from a behavioral standpoint. So it kind of scares me that it's like, imagine if it was in a physical realm where it's like, oh, it was a town square, and there's one or two kind of like dipshits who are saying like stupid things. And you're like, fuck you have to leave the town square. And then they go and they organize in a fucking basement somewhere. Ooh, I don't know that I want them organizing in a basement somewhere. I think I would rather have them right in front of my eyes in the public square where at least someone can try and go talk to them or at least keep an eye on them. And so as we kind of push extremism out of view, I think we just make it more extreme. I think we just feed it even more. So I don't have answers to this, because it's not like I'm like, yeah, put them in the fucking town square and have them pollute and say stupid shit all the time. But at least there I can watch them. I can see what the fuck's going on. I can try to interfere. I don't know how to find them if they're in a secret basement plotting something. And that's what scares me the most about this idea of like, we push them out of the mainstream into more and more fringe areas. This doesn't even start to touch the religious side of it. So we've been talking about more like stochastic terrorism, online cults, but as we saw in Australia. There's also versions of this that it is a religious war. Fundamentalists, and no religion has a monopoly on fundamentalist extremists. I think you can look up every religion, particularly the Abrahamic ones. Christianity, probably chart topper on this one, and they have done crazy shit under the banner of their religion. Christianity has done some really wicked, crazy shit, like over the last 2,000 years. The Christian church, the Catholic Church, has killed a lot of people and has started a lot of wars. I don't want to hear that it's like, okay, it's just Islam. Bro, open a history book, open anywhere in the last 2,000 years, and you will land on a war. Oh, I don't even know what percent, like 80, 90% chance you're going to put your finger and land on a war that a Christian is in the middle of. So Christians have done crazy shit. You know, I'm not going to open up this whole can of worms with fundamentalist extreme Judaism, which also exists, and we've been watching play out for the last couple years, you know, at least. Fundamentalist extremists do bad shit. I do not think all religions do bad shit, but I think all fundamentalist extremists do bad shit, and every religion has their share of fundamentalists. That is what I'm concerned about, is the fundamentalists. There are a lot of people who have absolutely gorgeous relationships to their religions. There are people who have a very beautiful relationship with Christianity and Jesus. There are people who have a gorgeous relationship with Islam. Sufis, who are a big inspiration for me. Sufism is a gorgeous, gorgeous relationship that people have with Islam. In Judaism, there's so much beauty that exists within Judaism. And some of the most moments I've been touched the most in my life has been through teachings of Judaism. So there is beauty and there can be ugliness, and then there's institutionalists, so like the actual institutions that can perpetrate harm, like the Catholic Church. So it's a mess. It's a fucking mess. But in this moment, I'm going to be talking about a little bit the fundamentalist side of religion. And often it's the same behavior that we found in the cults, which is you have this strict adherence, you want this group identity, you feel superior, you want to feel valued and have your place in things. You don't have a lot of sources of outside information. You're afraid of being shunned or ostracized as an isolation. A lot of religions, a lot of fundamentalists want to separate you from your body and separate you from the instincts of your body. They would love you to conform and comply. We still have the kind of same recipe of things that exists on the religious side. And the reason we can call them a cult is because they're almost coming from some fringe part of the extreme religion, or they might not even be part of the religion. They might just, again, be masquerading and putting the flag and the promos and the marketing and the branding, and might not even be an actual, true, devout follower of the religion. So you could look at this and say the antidote to almost all of this is like a healthy individualism. And on some level, that actually might be right. Yeah. Which is like, I have a really healthy sense of myself, my own, this kind of inner resilience and this inner connection to myself, whether that's the threat detection of my physical body, or have a very clear mind, right? A very, very like, this is reality and you can't bend that. So you really don't let other people fuck with your head. If you have a healthy, social life and you're interdependent with people, or you just really fucking can do alone time. Yeah. Like if you're really fucking good with being alone, you don't have this like really deep, deep need for, I have to belong somewhere. Remember I started with like, hey, I go my own way, I run my own race. So often those are the people that like, it's really hard to get them in the fucking cult because all they care about is like creativity and like being on their own and freedom and privacy. And like, they just want to like do their own thing and have fun and be stimulated and have adventures. Like, yeah, those are not good cult personalities. So on one level, we could say like, it's healthy to cultivate a little bit of healthy individualism. Yeah. I think that's probably great for all people. Have a bit of like a healthy individualism and not to kind of supplant what's happening in the I for the desires of the we. So we really need to actually step back from the social thing. The opposite of that is like we can encourage people to have a lot of diverse, healthy social connection. So you're not over reliant on one group to be your end all be all. So get some fucking hobbies. Get some fucking hobbies with people who are different from your like one social group. If you have one fucking social group, it's going to get weird. You should have contact with different kinds of people whether it's through your work or your hobbies or your family. Like, get outside of your fucking bubble. Get outside of your fucking bubble. Don't over rely. But again, you hear me, I'm like saying don't over rely on one group. So yes, we need social. We absolutely need social connection. We're hardwired for it. But like, diversify it. Don't get sucked into something. Don't get addicted to one group's approval. But now I'm going to take a bit of a disturbing turn, because this isn't the only configuration in which heinous stuff can happen. It's not just the we overrides the I. And this next section, if taken out of context, absolutely fuck me. Even taken in context might absolutely fuck me. I don't know. I'm working this out in my head. And I'm trying to really understand this. So I'm going to be working this thing out loud. And it's it might be controversial. Let's go. Up until now, we've talked about if we are just a little bit more individualistic, then we can guard against this thing about the we, yeah? And if we are just not as afraid and not as needy and not as this and that, the we can't override the I. There's like another scenario. And this scenario is like, what happens if the I overpowers the we? What if you have a crazy guy or something else we'll talk about in a second, and they're a true believer and they feel they're absolutely right to do what they do in spite of the collective being against them? When I was in university, I went to NYU in New York City in downtown Manhattan. And I went to NYU a few years after 9/11. Professors loved to use 9/11 in their teaching and in very weird and sometimes controversial ways. So I remember I had a kind of like an intro philosophy class when I went to NYU. It was one of those mandatory classes where you read a bunch of texts. And I was in this class, and my professor would always say like crazy shit, at least for me, coming from like a suburbia, more conformist, I don't know, suburban environment. He would say really crazy shit. I kept a notebook. I have to see if I can find it one day. I think it's probably somewhere, but I kept a notebook of all the crazy shit the guy was saying, because it was really offensive to me and it would really hit me hard in some ways. But I remember one of the times, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically was like, what if 9/11 was justified? And I was like, what the fuck, dude? Like, this is a really, like, it's weird being like 18 years old, sitting in a class, not really knowing much about the world, but knowing that you're like, I don't know, a few blocks away from ground zero, and someone just being like, yeah, what if 9/11 was justified? It's like, whoa. I was, of course, like outraged. I was offended. I was like, what the fuck? How dare you? And during that class, we grappled with a lot of different philosophical texts, a lot of different ways of trying to understand humans and human behavior. And one of the philosophers we read was a gentleman named Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard I couldn't even really grasp it at the time, but lately it's been kind of coming back up for me. Kierkegaard talks about this concept of the night of faith, the night of faith. He basically says, all right, we're looking at the Old Testament, and there's a story about the binding of Isaac. In the binding of Isaac, Abraham, who is one of the, most chosen of the chosen, he's like an elite level, fucking God's favorite children kind of guy. Abraham hears the voice of God, and God tells Abraham, you must go sacrifice your son on the mountaintop. You must kill Isaac for me, which is wild, right? Like, the God speaks to one of his like favorite people and is like, yo, dude, you gotta go kill your son. Drag his ass up a fucking mountain and kill him. Whoa. So Kierkegaard is basically like, whoa, what's the deal with this? What's up with this? And he kind of takes this thing of like, there is a God and God is good and Abraham's dope. So like, how do we justify what Abraham does is a lot of what I think this book is kind of, in essence, it's like Christians grappling with how to make this a moralistic or how to make this okay. The basic concept is, if we do believe there is a God and God tells you to do something, even if it's something that takes the most from you, and goes directly against the collective, should you do it? Should you do it? Now, there's a lot of assumptions underpinning that statement. The first is God. Like, is there God? Can God speak to us? How do we know it's God speaking to us if there is a God? And then let's assume all of that we can somehow, we did all that. We did all the homework on that. Well, then if you believe there's a God and you have faith in this deity, this authority outside yourself or within yourself tells you to do something, do you have any choice but to comply? Because if you don't, then you must not truly believe. You must truly not have faith. So for Kierkegaard, like the most goated activity, the most like fucking enlightened shit ever was like, yeah, you should go fucking try and kill Isaac. Go do it. If you're a true believer, if you have true faith, and that is the highest ideal, then you have to go do it. You have to kill your son. And that's what Abraham tries to do, right? Abraham drags his fucking son up the mountain. He binds him. He takes out a fucking knife and he swings at him. And it's only when he's in the midst of swinging at his son that God's like, yo, chill. Like, good, you proved yourself. We're all good here. We're all good here. And it was through that display of faith that Isaac was saved, and Abraham, I don't know, was he redeemed? I don't know what the interpretation of that is, but like everything's good. You know, everything's Gucci. Everything is great under the sun. So in this case, what Kierkegaard tells us is the knight of faith has to be willing to give up everything that's most important to them. They must have ultimate faith, and they must be willing to cross the collective. So the I takes a much stronger precedence over the we. There's another version of this that he calls the tragic hero. The tragic hero is the person that gives up everything, but does it to benefit the society. So I think this is like pretty encapsulated in a lot of like the Marvel movies, the superhero movies, where like you see sacrifices, right? Like Tony Stark sacrifices his life to save humanity, right? Or not even humanity, he saves 50% of all life in the universe. Black Widow gives up her own life so that they can get the Soul Stone, right, to defeat Thanos. So a lot of hero worship, hero comic book is like, I sacrifice myself for the greater good. That's like the whole spirit of Captain America. Captain America is like, I will put myself on the line. I have these morals, these values, this idealism that it's like I'm dispensable compared to the collective. So I will sacrifice myself for the collective. So that is the tragic hero, that like gives up everything but does it for the benefit of society. What Kierkegaard says, the knight of faith is like, it's like they give up everything but going against society. Because who in their right fucking mind in society is going to be like, yeah, you should go kill Isaac. Yeah, that's a good idea. Like, we're totally behind you killing your fucking son with a knife on a mountaintop. No one in their right mind, no normal person you go talk to the street is like, oh, you want to go kill your fucking son? You should go do that. Like, society, generally speaking, the vast majority would be like, that's crazy, dude. That's crazy. But if God tells you to do it, do you have an obligation to do it? If you have full faith, then I guess you have to. You have to do it if you have full faith. So this leads us to like, well, what is the source of God? What is the source of God? Because if it's some other person, then I'm like, no. Automatically, no. I just, no. No. Then we're back to the cult thing, right? Which is like, actually, it's another authority. It's another person. It's a social belonging thing. No. So just no. Let's cancel that. So now we say, God, you have an individual relationship with God. God speaks to you. This is the scenario we're opening, right? So there's some voice inside you and me that's quote unquote God. So do we believe in that, right? And then, I even said the word believe. Do we have faith in that? If you are religious and you believe there is a God, then you must listen to whatever fucking shit comes into your head, I guess. Now, I think there are different voices in our heads, which I'll open up in a second. But is there a God that commands us? Do we have this duty to obey? I think we'd all just default to like, well, what do we get raised with? What are we raised with? What religion are we a part of? How does that That's been answered for me already. I don't even have to think about that, right? And so in this moment, if you have that, then you just shortcut. You just fucking turn this off and you're like, fuck you, man. I've got a shortcut. I know all about God. Someone told me because they wrote it in a book a long time ago. So I know all about. There's no answer to this, of course. I don't fucking know. I think there's a lot of very smart people who tackled this for thousands of years, more smart than me, more intelligent than I. I'll just tell you my thing. This is just me now. The way I've come to make sense of my own life is, do I believe there's a man in the sky? No, I do not believe so. That's fucking, I think that's weird. That's anthropomorphizing, like, because I'm a man, God must be man. It's kind of a weird, and he's just sitting in the sky and just, what? Okay. I'm sorry. I don't believe there is a anthropomorphized God just in the sky conducting the show or watching the show. Personally, again, universalist probably value set here, I do believe we exist in something called the universe. And I believe that there is a animating source or animating energy, animating spirit. I do not believe it is human in nature at all, though. So if we try to understand it as a human entity or as a human being, then I don't believe that's remotely the right way to start understanding the universe and how the universe works. But there's a lot of weird little intricacies when you get into like the quantum mechanics of how the universe works. There's a lot of weird, interesting little things. We start to study black holes and relativity, like all these things that I have just such a very shaky grasp on. I'm like, damn, dude, like there's so much about the universe we don't know and don't understand and probably never will be able to know or understand. So my sense, my feeling, my faith, my belief is that there is this incredible intelligence, but this intelligence does not look like anything that's human intelligence. So the idea that it would form thoughts and deeds and commands is not the type of intelligence that I imagine or I intuit. But I believe there's such an intense intelligence that's just beyond what we can even comprehend. And some of that might just be like how the fucking quantum realm works. Like we still don't know. Is there dark energy, dark matter? Like we don't even know how this fucking thing works. There's something that we're in that's very complex and is a bit of a trickster. It's hard to pin down where things are in the universe. I believe that we produce data, we produce information. So every vibration in this universe produces some kind of information. And I believe that information is stored in the quantum realm. So we're constantly coding. So everything we do, everything that happens, everything that exists is constantly coding things in the quantum realm. So I believe we are producing tons of information or data, whatever word resonates more. So the fact that we exist, I think, does have importance, big importance. I don't think it's necessarily bigger or less than anything else in the universe, but everything in the universe is encoding information into itself. And so every thought you have, every emotion, every word, every breath that you and I take is being encoded in this thing. There are some theories by legitimate physicists, physicists, this isn't just out of my brain, but like that we might be living in some version of a virtual reality. What that means is that there might be a two-dimensional universe and it projects up a three-dimensional universe. And we think the 3D thing is real. It's how our entire being has evolved to think the 3D is real. But it's like all of it sits on some 2D plane. And that 2D plane, all it's doing is just essentially collecting information. So there's a lot of unanswered questions we have. And then I know from a very personal experience, when I've done very deep meditation, there is a different voice that can come into my beingness. With the people I've been with, we call these downloads, right? They're like these profound insights. It's like being struck by lightning. And this is more indifferent than the chatter of the mind or things that come from the past or illusions of the future. So it's not mind chatter. It's not fantasy. I wouldn't even call it vision. Like everything that in our day-to-day mind produces, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about something completely different, which is a very unique experience where I think if you have had meditation, you get what I'm saying, which is there are moments where you're in a state of full beingness, full receptivity, and then you're zapped by lightning and all of a sudden these insights come to you. And sometimes they're crazy. Like they're things that seem nonsensical or non-rational. And then if you act on them, it's like you can move through this world with like quantum leaps. It's like you can accelerate what you're trying to do or your role in life exponentially. It's from these quantum leaps, from this deep state of reflection that I have seen profound transformations in my life. For instance, in my other job, we wrote a book, but I didn't write the book. We didn't write the book. The book came to me almost by revelation. I don't know what else to call it. It was like, we've actually, I guess I'm announcing it here. It's a good thing no one listens to this. There's 2 more books that we've already written that are not edited, and they just come almost like divine spark, divine revelation. This incredible inspiration comes. For me, it feels like if I don't do the action, like I have this like monkey on my back, like I can't get it off me until I complete the fucking action, until I've done the leap of faith. In some ways, Kierkegaard might be right. Maybe there is something about being a knight of faith where something somewhere inside me, outside me, I don't know, it speaks to me, it tells me something crazy, and then I can't come to peace or contentment until I do the action. And it's a kind of crazy action. And then I do it and my life leaps forward. Most people struggle to write a book. They spend years trying to write a book. In a year, I think we've written 3 without even wanting to or trying. It just comes out. I'll even give a small example. When I was first starting to kind of do meditation, I was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens in New York City, and I didn't have any space. It was one of those apartments where like it felt like as if the walls were touching each other. Yeah. And I would also in my living room have like a small desk set up. It's where I had a couch and like a TV set up. Like there wasn't space in the apartment. Like I'm telling you, it was like wall to wall. You could touch fingertip to fingertip, and the bedroom was fingertip to fingertip. And a lot of the meditations I've done that have been the most revolutionary are Osho active meditations. So it's meditations that get you deeply into your body and support you to kind of release energy and, you know, get the nervous system into a receptive place. And then you can actually sit and kind of do what we quote unquote usually see as meditation, the technique of meditation. And I was doing a lot of these, and I was having these profound insights at workshops and retreats. And I remember I was in my apartment in Queens and I wanted to do these meditations, but I literally had no space. So you need to be able to move. You need to actually have like floor space to move. And I remember I was just basically just trying to do them like in like a, 1 foot by 1 foot or 2 feet by 2 feet kind of area. So not really moving at all because didn't have space. And I remember during one of these meditations, it was as if I was struck by lightning. And I had this insight, this realization of like, I need to smash my bed. I need to smash my bed, destroy the bed frame because it's idle space. It's idle space. Can I just fucking destroy it and then put the mattress on the ground and sleep and then put the mattress up on the wall and then use it to do exercise and meditations? I come out of the meditation, I'm like, this is fucking insane. This is actually crazy. There's no way I'm going to fucking smash my bed frame. And for like, I don't know, some days, maybe even a couple of weeks, I was just like, no. So I was unwilling to answer the call. Yeah. Like I had this inner call to do this thing. It was this almost divine voice coming through me. And I kept saying, I'm not going to do this. This is fucking crazy. And at some point I was really... because it's like a monkey on my back, I'm like, fuck, I have to do this. I do have to do this. So I grabbed a hammer and I just quietly smashed my bed frame to smithereens. It was a lot of fun, actually. There's not a lot of times in life I've gotten to do that. So it was a ton of fun. And then I had the room open to me so that I could do meditations. And I spent the next 2 or 3 years enjoying doing meditations and exercise. And it was a very transformative space. So there's these moments where this kind of divine inspiration comes. Now, is that voice, again, coming from within or without? It depends, I guess, your level of spirituality. I believe it's kind of both and one and the same all at once. I don't think that we are so separate from the universe, that it's us and them. Again, this like in-group, out-group thing, like we are all everything all at once. And it makes sense to me that there is a very deep, profound intelligence and order to things that we might never understand or know. But no, it's not a man in the sky giving me commands. And so somehow divine voice comes and tells us to do stuff. And if we answer the call and do something that kind of is even against the collective, then Kierkegaard would say we are a knight of faith, a knight of faith. But the disturbing part of this is like, so when divine intervention comes, when God tells Abraham to kill his son, well, isn't there also a like, thou shalt not kill? So God is allowed to violate the commandments, yeah? Or command us to violate the commandments. So then what the fuck's what? So should you be listening to the God that said, thou shalt not kill? Or should you be listening to the God that says, drag your son's ass up the mountain and kill him? God's a bit confusing in that way, no? In the Old Testament, in the Abrahamic religions, the contradictions. So there's an inner voice, though, that might come, and the divine voice says, kill your son. Well, if it's truly the divine voice, and you truly are a believer, then you must do it, even if the society and the collective say it's wrong. And what if the whole society is a cult? Your whole society is fucked up. Isn't it the voice within, the voice of God, the divine voice that gets you out of the cult if there's no external support? Isn't it ignoring the divine voice within that probably got you into the cult in the first place? So we need to listen to the voice? Is that the conclusion of all this, that we have to listen to the voice within? And it's possible the voice within tells us to go kill our own son? This is very disturbing. At least I consider it very disturbing, because it's like, where is the source of truth in all this? What's the North Star? What is the inner direction? Because if everyone's a kind of a deranged individualist just listening to the inner voice, is that it? Is that all there is to this life? Is we each just do our own crazy fucking thing? Or is it we all just become slaves to the collective and the herd mentality? Or is it we're just destined to be in this purgatory of push-pull between the two things? I believe, again, belief, this is my faith, I guess you could say in a way. I believe there's certain signs when we act from the divine voice as opposed to other mental chatter or other psychoses we might be suffering. My feeling is that when we follow the divine voice, in my own experience, one, we must recognize the feeling and what the voice is, right? It usually comes from, I think, reflection. So that's profound silence or being in nature. For me, there's always this zap of kind of electricity, but I don't know if that's universal at all. That's just that's me. It's how I know it's for me. It's like, whoa, it's like my body has this electricity running through it. It's very calm. I feel very, very calm while it's happening. Very, very still. It's usually it is kind of unorthodox. And what I've noticed is when I take that action, it's as if it leaves no trace behind. So if someone were trying to reproduce the action I take, it wouldn't work. It's something that was like very unique for me in that moment, and I can't go preach it to the world. Like, my advice to the world is not go smash your bed with a hammer. I've never given someone else that advice in my life. Never even had the impulse to. It was just something for me in that moment that I needed to do for myself. I think usually when we take these divine actions, they bring us closer to ourselves and closer often to the earth and nature around us. But that still leaves room for doing things, again, if it's true night of faith, that seem wrong to the masses. It still might necessitate killing our only son. And so this is where that I'm grappling with, what I'm struggling with, is that it's possible for a night of faith to do quote unquote bad things. And I don't know what motivated this person. I don't know if it was a night of faith or was it just some fucking deranged terrorist acting on behalf of their little cult. The intent of the person seems to matter. The intent of the person seems to matter. And intent only lives within the individual. And I don't know that we can ever fully control intent unless we are just going to say we're going to mind control the fuck out of everyone. So unless we want to become the leaders of the cult and we want to bind everyone and we want to be the fucking authoritarian, then they're always going to be, every person has the capacity to be an individual, and every person has the capacity to do deranged shit, and every person has the capacity to be a knight of faith, and every person has the capacity to be a tragic hero. I don't know what's happening inside of you. I barely fucking know what's happening inside of me on half the days. So how the fuck am I going to know what's happening inside of you? Like, we think of like Luigi Mangione, right? The weird thing about Luigi, and I could sit here ideologically and say, I do support or I don't support. I'm going beyond ideology for a moment. When Luigi assassinated the CEO of the healthcare company, of the insurance company. What was remarkable to me is that almost across the political spectrum, the people, almost everyone I talked to, even inside myself, I did not feel the same heightened levels of like anger, repulsion, disgust, sadness. What I saw and I sensed in other people was joy. There was a lot of joy. Somehow there was this outpouring of joy and almost love, which is very bizarre after an assassination. And so is Luigi a knight of faith? I don't know, because I don't know him. I don't know his intent. I don't know what's happening inside of him. But I see the guy very calm. He's smiling. He doesn't seem to have a particular deranged, unhinged, psychotic disposition. So we're left to kind of guess at the inner state of this man. But what if killing in this instance is somehow a divine act? And then what about the acts of terror? What's different? What's different? The behavior is the same, but the intent is different? I don't have answers to this. I don't even know what I'm grappling with probably, but I'm grappling with something here. Because if intent is the only differentiator, there's no fucking way we can measure that. There's no way we can even know really what intent is. It's something so profoundly individualistic and inside the person. I mean, most of us don't even know what the fuck motivates us day to day. What I found is in myself and others, when we have one clear intention, the arrow flies true. And anytime something gets muddled, there was more than one intention present that we were not aware of. So there was a motivation or multiple motivations present we were not aware of. And that's what muddles things. So clarity gives us the most true direction. So if someone acts with that level of clarity and intention and groundedness and calm, and it's almost like a right action, even if it is bad, quote unquote bad, what do we do with that? Can we develop some kind of moral accounting system that makes room for that? I don't know. I find this topic extremely challenging because it would be easier to just say violence is bad. Killing is bad. But is it? Or is it always? I think a lot about I call it the Les Mis example, Les Mis morality, where in the beginning of the movie and book and musical Les Miserables, the protagonist, Jean Valjean, is starving and he steals a loaf of bread. And so you could say stealing is bad, but if you're hungry and you're about to die, is stealing bad? Or is it necessary? If you act in self-defense and kill someone, is that bad or is it necessary? Yeah, like I don't like killing. I don't like stealing. There's a lot of things I don't like. This is where the whole concept of like a good and a bad collapses for me. It's like really hard to have some kind of like moralism because I don't know what's good or bad, and not in like a anything goes nihilistic. Again, I think there's rules and principles, laws. There's things that keep things more orderly than chaotic. Not suggesting this is just like a free-for-all, but the moral component of it is like to evaluate, to put a judgment on it, to put a label of like you're good, you're bad. I don't know how to almost do that for certain things, and this is me probably grappling with that. So I'm challenged by this knight of faith thing. I'm really challenged. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be coming to a logical conclusion on this one. I don't think there's a bow to put on it. I don't know what to make of this. I think it just is. We have to sit with this discomfort of being part of a collective and being an individual, of trying to serve the collective and trying to protect the collective and trying to serve the individual and trying to protect the individual. And all of these in the most human way possible kind of pull on each other. And maybe there is a possibility that there is a divine voice, a divine inspiration. And maybe there are knights of faith out there amongst us who do fucking crazy shit, who do bad shit, but do it for the right reasons. I don't know. It's like I'm reminded of a story that comes, I think, from a more Zen teaching, where there's a samurai that's been tasked to go assassinate a politician. So the samurai sneaks into the house of the politician, and he goes up to him to strike him. And as he starts to draw his katana, his sword, the politician spits in his face. And so the samurai, he puts it back in the hilt, right? And he leaves. And then he comes back the next night, and he goes to kill the politician. And as he's pulling the sword out of the case, the politician spits in his face. So once again, the samurai puts the sword back in and leaves. On the third night, the samurai comes and starts to take the sword out, and the politician spits in his face. And this time, the samurai completes drawing the sword out of the scabbard, and he goes to strike. And the politician goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. How come when I spit in your face this night, you go to strike and kill me?" And the samurai says, "In the first and the second night, when you spit in my face, I got angry, and I'm not here to kill you out of anger. So I left so that I wouldn't kill you out of anger. Today, when you spit in your face, I didn't feel angry, and so I'm here to complete my duty. I'm here to complete my job." So ultimately, it seems like the quality we bring to something, the intention we bring to something is super, super important, but then it means we must cede control to individuals living out their individualistic roles and actions. I don't know what better way to say it. We have to cede control and let individuals do individualistic things. We cannot control everyone, is a little bit of what I'm gathering from this episode. And we're all just here producing information, and we're all just here producing data for the universe, for this virtual reality that we're in. I don't know. Of course, in these instances, there are real people who've been impacted. There are family members, friends who have lost someone, who feel deep grief, and just an ocean of emotions. There are people who share common identities, so there's a loyalty. Folks who are Jewish, right? In the case of Australia, we have an affinity with them, and we feel the impact of that. So these are real things. I don't mean to minimize or to just turn this into some kind of like philosophical thing. I don't want it to come off so insensitive. It's just what this sparked in me over the last week is grappling with a bit of this. And at its root, that is probably one of the most difficult things to answer. How do we make decisions? What is the North Star? And for better or worse, for me, I keep coming down to it is that divine voice. It is that really centered, grounded thing within. The reason I like this feeling of the divine voice, like I said, the kind of action that leaves no trace, connecting more within, connecting with nature, is I do believe it kind of tries to free us from a lot of ideology, frees us from a lot of the shoulds of the we, protects us from the cult shit, probably even protects us from our own deranged thinking, because a lot of deranged thinking happens at the mind chatter level. But depending on your value set, you might have a different answer. It might just be what's good for the human tribe I'm in, what's good for me, or what's the most fun. You might have a very different response. That's a bit of the human condition. And so as we go into the holidays, happy Hanukkah to anyone who's listening who observes and celebrates. Soon to be Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Let's not also forget that there's another one which I observe, which is the winter solstice. I like observing the changing of the seasons because one, it's a fact, it happens. And it's also seems to be across most cultures for the entirety of human history something that we've celebrated, we've acknowledged, respected, and celebrated. And I do feel like there's an energetic shifting that happens around the changing of the seasons. So tomorrow we're going into the first day of winter, which some level sucks because it's been so brutally cold in the United States, and we've had a very icy, wintry, cold, windy autumn period. So saying that winter is just about to begin is a bit demoralizing because it feels like we've just had 2 months of winter. But on the bright side, literally, tomorrow is the longest night of the year. So it's when it's the most dark. And it's the most where I believe we can connect with ourselves. We can come closest almost to this divine source and this divine voice, at least as it relates to the seasons. I think we always have access, but there's something in the environment that supports us the most, I think, tomorrow, to go inwards, to really go inwards and to really enjoy that process of being with ourselves and being in. I always found there's a bit of a conflict because we put all these celebrations like Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, where it's very social and out there, at a time of the year when we might be most served by going inward and being actually in our most individualistic state, our most personal, sensitive, intimate place with ourselves. And then after tomorrow, every night for the next 6 months will start to be shorter and shorter and shorter. And every day will start to be longer and longer and longer. And so we begin the ascent. This has been the fullest reach of the descent, and now we go into the ascent, and more light every day, more light, more light. I like this because it tunes us into our own nature. It tunes us into the nature around us. So that's what I'll be doing today and tomorrow, this weekend. And I will carry this energy forward into the rest of the holiday season. And the funny thing about these episodes, as nonsensical as they are, now that I'm in this intimate space, if you're listening, I can even share this. What I grapple with, what I share most times is also coming from sitting in that stillness, sitting in that source, and then something pops up and I'm like, seriously, that's what I need to fucking talk about, including this video. There are other parts of me that really didn't want to make this episode because it's really hard to talk about, and I think it's very easy to talk about poorly, and I probably did talk about it poorly, but there's something in me that's just compelling me to like, you gotta just do it. Talk about it, post it, get it out there. And so I'm listening to the voice within, even if it gets me in trouble with the collective. So I'm still fucking grappling with this night of faith shit. Okay. I wish everyone who might be listening to this amazing holiday period, I wish you rest, relaxation. I wish you the opportunity to connect with yourself and go within and connect with your own body and senses and feelings and emotions, to clear your head of chatter and to listen, to really listen, to hear and to listen really what's going on within and see what comes up. And I'll see you soon.